Brian, a few minutes ago in your response to Jeff, you said the American people should feel optimistic about the direction of the country. Survey after survey shows they don't. An AP survey over the weekend showed 3/4 of Americans view the direction of the economy is heading the economy is heading in the wrong direction. Is that an objective for the president tomorrow night to sort of convince the American public that their views of the economy are not the way, that they should be seeing things the way you are and not the way they are currently feeling right now?
I think the objective, as is always the case for the president, is to, number one, meet the American people where they are, with the recognition, as I mentioned, that the anxiety and the ongoing challenges that families feel in their lives are the reality of a very challenging period with a pandemic and a war in Europe that drove gas prices up and food prices up and created a lot of uncertainty. And so first and foremost, to meet the American people where they are, but also to help explain why he is optimistic, that if we continue to make the kind of progress that we have, historic progress, even with all of the distance that we have yet to travel, then more and more families, more and more communities are going to see economic opportunity and more durable economic opportunity as a result of the policies that we have put in place, as a result of the economic progress that we're making. So that's the way that the president has always approached these things, but we'll approach it tomorrow is to acknowledge and meet the American people where they are, but also to try to tell a story about where we are going, where we can go together. And it is the case that if you go around the world, if you talk to heads of state, CEOs, other leaders, they will tell you, that the United States really is better positioned than almost any other country, that the opportunity to invest in the United States is something that people are enthusiastic about. And that bodes very well for the economy, not only in the very short term, but over the medium term as well.
Thank you. Thanks, Brian, and good luck to you as you leave here. So related to that, Jeff Zients was brought in large part to be to implement a lot of the pieces of legislation that were signed into law. So I wonder if you could give us a timeline for when you think Americans really feel the impact of CHIPS, of IRA, of infrastructure. How long is it going to take before those policies really make a difference in the economy? And then secondly, at the top of your memo before the McCarthy meeting, you wrote 2 questions that you really wanted him to answer, that the president was going to pose to him. Can you tell us if you got those answers about the when will they release their budget, and will he commit to the bedrock principle that the U.S. won't default on its debt?
Yeah. Well, so let me take the first question first. And so the first question is we are beginning to see the impact all across the country. And I think that part of the reason why we have seen economic projections over the second half of last year defy many people's and many more skeptical observers' projections. We saw political outcomes defy a lot of people's projections as well. Is that we're beginning to see that. But on all 3 of the major pieces of legislation, on infrastructure, CHIPS and Science, and on the Inflation Reduction Act, 2023 is the year in which the most significant impact will begin to occur. And so, these things operate in stages. And so, if you live in a community like the greater Syracuse community in upstate New York, or outside in the area around Phoenix, the announcement that there is going to be a big investment in building a facility to manufacture semiconductors is the beginning of a process that is going to change and affect your community across time, beginning with significant new jobs in construction, and then over the course of 12 or 18 months, hiring engineers and facility operators and the like. And so that will happen across time. But I think that this is a year of action and investment and implementation where across those areas you're going to see this unfold in more and more ways. And one of the things that we often show, but we use for our own internal planning as well, is just a physical map of the United States where you can see increasingly the commitments of private companies making investments, the grant announcements going in, the ways in which they're going to begin to unturn. And so that will certainly happen across time. I think, I do expect that this coming year will be a big year on that front. And the last thing that I'll say is that, this commitment to invest in this country in a way that we haven't really done for decades is core to the president's bottom-up economic philosophy. That you have to do that with speed and precision. You need to make sure people understand how it's done, but you also need to recognize that if we're really going to rebuild our infrastructure, we're really going to regain our strategic edge in an area like semiconductors, we also have to be committed to doing it over a multi-year period. Certainly that's true of other countries where we have been deferring that maintenance and not doing that investment. So it's also going to be something that we need to commit to over time.
And the McCarthy memo?
Oh, right, okay. And so, what I would say about the meeting itself is that that both the president and the speaker had a constructive and frank exchange. The president clearly laid out his perspective on those issues. And I will say, we continue to hope and expect that the House Republicans will put out a budget plan, will bring forward a budget resolution. That is the way that the process works most effectively. And it really is important for the American people and for everyone to see the plan in full detail with numbers that add up. And then just back to the first, to the earlier question, this question of honoring the full faith and credit of the United States and everybody who holds an office of trust being clear that the United States will honor those obligations and will not default on its debt is something the president will continue to make clear and continue to make clear. That's his expectation of anybody, Republican, Democrat.